Oscar De La Hoya captured Olympic gold at 19 years old. By the age of 35, he had become the most despised figure in boxing, surrounded by music and controversy. And in his own telling, that status was no accident. The more success he achieved, the more adversaries he accumulated, particularly those who profited most from his efforts. Oscar insists that these very people later conspired to destroy him. By the conclusion of this account, you will understand exactly whom Oscar blames for his downfall and why the photographs that ruined his reputation in 2007 were never meant to feature him at all. She was 39 years old. Her son Oscar was 17. The triumph at the Goodwill Games that year was overshadowed by the news that his mother was suffering from a terminal illness. Before she died, she made one request of the boy who had been boxing since he could walk. She wanted him to earn an Olympic gold medal. That was her final wish. That was the burden Oscar De La Hoya carried into every gym, every sparring session, every lonely night between 1990 and the summer of 1992. He was not merely preparing for a boxing tournament. He was training to fulfill a dead woman's last words. He was born in East Los Angeles, California, into a boxing family. His grandfather Vicente had been an amateur fighter during the 1940s, and his father Joel Sr. had been a professional boxer in the 1960s. His brother Joel Jr. was also a boxer. Boxing was never a choice in the De La Hoya household, it was a family inheritance, passed down like a surname, like blood, like the scars that accompanied it. Oscar De La Hoya wrote that he first put on boxing gloves at age 4, and a year later he was following his older brother to a local gym. By the time he was a teenager, he had already compiled an astonishing record. De La Hoya won the National Junior Olympics 119-pound title at 15. In 1989, he captured the National Golden Gloves title in the bantamweight division. In 1990, at 17, he won the U.S. National Championship at featherweight and became the youngest U.S. boxer at that year's Goodwill Games, earning a gold medal. His amateur career included 234 victories, 163 by knockout. These numbers belong to a kid who had not yet graduated from high school. And every punishing round, every bruised rib, every drop of sweat was being directed toward that singular promise to his mother. As the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona approached, De La Hoya transformed his mother's dream into a laser-like focus for his training. The American media seized on the narrative and ran with it, the boy from the barrio, the deceased mother, the Olympic dream. It made for the kind of story that sells itself. NBC highlighted his journey. Boxing magazines profiled him. The US media publicized his quest to fulfill his mother's dying wish and nicknamed him the Golden Boy, a label that has remained with him throughout his career. But Oscar himself felt something different from what everyone projected onto him. He was going through a very difficult period because the entire story revolved around whether Oscar could win the gold medal for his mother, who had passed away the previous October. That was the entire build-up and the hype surrounding him. The 19-year-old was being consumed by a narrative he had not authored. He was grieving a woman with whom he had a deeply complicated relationship. Yet the world wanted him to smile, to cry on cue, to perform the role of the devoted son fulfilling a sacred promise. After an upset victory in the first round over Cuban boxer Julio Gonzalez, De La Hoya defeated German boxer Marco Rudolph to win the gold medal. Rudolph had been the only fighter to defeat him in the years leading up to that bout, adding extra drama. And when it was over, when the gold medal hung around his neck and the national anthem played through the loudspeakers, Oscar De La Hoya stood on that podium and felt nothing. He was on the podium, the anthem was playing, and he was simply numb. He could not cry, laugh, or smile. He was just picturing his mother's face. Just numb. Right when he left the ring, the instant he did that and NBC came up to interview him, he broke down. That moment, broadcast live to millions of Americans, cemented Oscar De La Hoya as the Golden Boy. It was perfect television, the young fighter, tears streaming down his face, dedicating his gold medal to his departed mother. But what nobody watching at home understood was that those tears were not purely tears of joy. They were the tears of a young man drowning in grief, in confusion, in the overwhelming pressure of being turned into a symbol. He got out of the ring and the commentator asked him, "How do you feel doing it for your mom?" That is when it took off. He was this shy kid from East LA who did not know how to act in front of the camera. He did not know what to say, so he just went with it. It became overwhelming. And now that everyone was saying it, he did not want to say, "Wait a minute, I did not say that." He did not want to disappoint people. And just like that, the mythology of Oscar De La Hoya was born, the golden boy, the promise keeper, the son who boxed his way to glory for the mother he lost. The truth, as it so often is, was far more complicated. But in 1992, nobody was interested in the truth. They were interested in the story, and Oscar De La Hoya, barely old enough to vote, had just become the most compelling story in American sports. Now it was time to turn that story into money. On November 23, 1992, De La Hoya made his professional debut by scoring a first-round knockout victory over Lamar Williams in 1 minute and 42 seconds. The professional career of Oscar De La Hoya had begun, and it began like a thunderclap. He did not ease into the sport, he detonated. One opponent after another fell in the early rounds, first-round knockouts, second-round stoppages, the kind of explosive violence that made highlight reels and sold pay-per-view subscriptions. On his 12th career fight, at 21 years old, De La Hoya became a super featherweight world champion. On March 5, 1994, after defeating Jimmy Bredal via 10th round retirement to win the WBO title, he was 21 years old and already a world champion. On July 29, 1994, he knocked out Jorge Poyes in the second round to win the vacant WBO lightweight title. 2 world titles in 2 weight classes in the same calendar year. The boxing world had not seen a young fighter ascend this quickly or decisively since Sugar Ray Leonard, Oscar's childhood idol. Behind the scenes, however, the machinery of professional boxing was already grinding Oscar down in ways no one on the outside could see. Later that month, De La Hoya would fire his co-managers Middleman and Nelson over money issues. The business of boxing is unforgiving. Managers, promoters, trainers, hangers-on, everyone wanted a piece of the golden boy, and Oscar, still barely into his 20s, was navigating a financial and political landscape that would challenge a seasoned executive, let alone a kid from East LA whose primary education had been conducted in a boxing ring. By the mid-1990s, Oscar De La Hoya had become something boxing had not seen in years, a crossover star known as the Golden Boy. De La Hoya transcended his sport, using his bilingual skills to generate crossover appeal among Latinos and whites. He was handsome and charming. He spoke English and Spanish with equal fluency. He appeared on magazine covers, at award shows, on late-night television. He was not just a fighter, he was a brand. De La Hoya was named the Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year in 1995 and was its top-rated fighter in the world pound-for-pound in 1997 and 1998. Those are not subjective assessments from casual fans. The ring is the Bible of boxing. To be named Fighter of the Year and the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world in consecutive years is to be recognized as the single best practitioner of the craft on the entire planet. And Oscar De La Hoya was that. On June 7, 1996, Oscar De La Hoya fought Mexican legend Julio Cesar Chavez for the lineal and WBC light welterweight championship. De La Hoya, with a record of 21-0 with 19 knockouts, defeated Chavez by a 4th-round TKO. The fight was stopped due to several bad cuts suffered by Chavez above his left eye. Chavez was at that point one of the most revered fighters in Mexican boxing history, a man with a record of 96-1-1. To stop him in 4 rounds was not just a victory, it was a coronation. Oscar De La Hoya had arrived at the very apex of the sport, and the view from the top was intoxicating. But the view from the top is also isolating. And the higher Oscar climbed, the more alone he became. The money poured in, tens of millions of dollars per fight, endorsement deals, pay-per-view bonanzas that made him the richest boxer on the planet. De La Hoya generated approximately $700 million in pay-per-view income, making him the top pay-per-view earner before being surpassed by Floyd Mayweather Jr. But wealth, as Oscar would discover again and again, is no antidote for the kind of pain that lives inside a person's bones. At home, De La Hoya claimed to have had an emotionally abusive relationship with both his mother and father, with him at one point having no connection to any family. The golden boy image, the smiling champion, the generous philanthropist, the beloved son of East LA, was a mask. Underneath it was a man in agony. He said he literally just told his father that he loved him 2 years ago, and he could not tell his mother because she passed away when he was 18. Think about that for a moment. A man who spent his entire career being defined by his love for his dead mother, the promise, the gold medal, the tears on the podium, could not in fact bring himself to tell his own father he loved him until he was nearly 50 years old. The disconnect between the public narrative and the private reality was vast enough to swallow a person whole, and it very nearly did. What the public did not know, what Oscar himself could barely process, was the nature of his childhood. De La Hoya says his personal and professional drive was fueled by the physical and emotional abuse he suffered from his parents. His household was abusive, to say the least. His mother passed away when he was 16 or 17, and what people do not know is that she was very abusive physically, and he was the only child who would receive it. When he got inside the ring, he would have all this anger and rage, and he would not change it for anything because he strongly feels that what he lived, the course of his life, was just meant to be because of how he lived at home, what he endured over the years, the abuse from his father and his mother. And so he had an outlet with boxing. The boxing ring was not simply a workplace for Oscar De La Hoya, it was a confessional, a therapist's couch. It was the one place in the entire world where the violence inside him, the rage, the grief, the confusion, had a legitimate outlet. Luckily, he did have boxing as an outlet. The ring was his safe place. Believe it or not, getting hit, punching someone, was his safe place. That is how much the struggle was outside the ring. It was a way to get the anger and the rage out. He remembers picturing his mother's face on his opponents and literally just getting angry. That is how bad it was at one point, and he is lucky that he was able to manage it and kind of control it just inside the ring, to have it inside the ring and not outside, because who knows what he would have done. Every knockout Oscar De La Hoya delivered in that ring, every concussive left hook, every body shot that folded an opponent in half, was propelled not just by athletic talent but by a bottomless reservoir of pain. The crowd cheered. They thought they were watching artistry. They were watching a man trying to survive. On September 3, 2021, De La Hoya disclosed that he was raped by a woman when he was 13. He did not disclose the name of the woman but stated that she was over 35 years of age. That revelation landed like a grenade in the middle of a career retrospective that most people thought they already understood. Oscar De La Hoya, the man who had been presented to the world as the golden boy, the all-American success story, the kid who made good, had been carrying this secret for nearly 4 decades. He was 13. She was over 35. The math alone is nauseating. This was not a confession Oscar offered casually. It took him until he was 48 years old to speak those words publicly, 48 years of silence, 48 years of carrying that violation in a body that the entire world had watched being hit and hitting back for a living. And it reframes everything that came before it. Every self-destructive choice, every bout of depression, every stumble into the arms of drugs and alcohol, in a light that is almost unbearably painful to look at directly. The world saw a champion who seemed to have everything. What they could not see was a child who had been robbed of something fundamental. Before he ever stepped into a professional ring, the Golden Boy moniker had always felt aspirational, triumphant. Now it felt like a curse, a gleaming facade slapped over damage that went all the way down to the foundation. By the late 1990s, Oscar's personal life had become a tangle of competing relationships, fractured loyalties, and tabloid ammunition. De La Hoya began dating actress and Miss USA 1995 title holder Shana Moakler in October 1997. Moakler and De La Hoya announced their engagement in October 1998. She gave birth to their daughter Oshana the following year. For a moment, it seemed like Oscar was building the domestic stability that had eluded him his entire life, a fiancé, a daughter, a home away from the chaos of the ring. But the illusion shattered spectacularly in September 2000. The relationship abruptly ended when Mosley, who was at home watching the Latin Grammy Awards on television, saw De La Hoya escorting another woman to the show. It was the kind of humiliation that plays out in slow motion, your partner on live television with someone who is not you. Millions of people saw it. The internet, still in its relative infancy, buzzed about it, and the fallout was swift. In December 2000, Mosley filed a $62.5 million palimony suit against her ex-fiancé, claiming he was an alcoholic, abusive to her and to their daughter, and that he used them as props to promote his public image. That phrase, props to promote his public image, cuts to the heart of the Oscar De La Hoya tragedy. The Golden Boy persona had become an all-consuming brand, and the people closest to Oscar were beginning to realize that they were being consumed by it too. The palimony suit was settled out of court in 2001, and almost immediately Oscar moved on. On October 5, 2001, De La Hoya married Milly Corregia. Corregia was a Puerto Rican singer and actress whom Oscar had met in characteristically cinematic fashion. In the studio, while trying to record songs for his album, he was finding it difficult to sing with more passion. To demonstrate passionate singing, his producer Rudy Perez showed him a music video featuring Corregia. De La Hoya asked for the name of the singer in the video, and the producer replied that she was a singer and actress named Milly Corregia. De La Hoya asked that Corregia be the model in his next music video. It was romantic. It was dramatic. It was exactly the kind of story that would fit the Golden Boy narrative. After meeting each other at an EMI convention in Texas, the two fell in love and began dating. They were married on October 5, 2001, in a secret ceremony in San Juan. For a while, it looked like Oscar De La Hoya had finally found his anchor. Milly was calm, private, removed from the chaos of boxing politics. Together, they seemed to represent the possibility of a fresh start. But Oscar De La Hoya did not know how to do fresh starts. He only knew how to fight. And when the fights in the ring started going wrong, the fights outside of it got worse. The first major crack in Oscar's aura of invincibility as a boxer came on September 18, 1999, when he faced Felix Trinidad for the WBC welterweight title. He lost that title to Trinidad in 1999. The defeat was controversial. Many observers believed Oscar had won the fight but lost the decision because he spent the later rounds boxing defensively rather than engaging. The loss haunted him. It was the first blemish on what had been a seemingly flawless career, and it exposed a vulnerability that his opponents would exploit for the remainder of his time in the ring. Then came Shane Mosley. He was unable to regain the welterweight title against Shane Mosley. Their first fight in 2000 saw Mosley win a split decision that left Oscar visibly devastated. The rematch was more of a boxing match than their first encounter, and while some rounds were close, De La Hoya's game plan, utilizing his jab, seemed to be paying off, leaving Mosley visually frustrated. It was De La Hoya who seemed to be landing the cleaner, more effective punches, and he obliterated Mosley in compu box, landing over 100 more. But judges apparently did not see it that way, awarding Mosley a controversial unanimous decision. Mosley was later connected to the Balco Lab steroid scandal. Jeff Nowitzki, a lead investigator on the Balco case, reported that documents seized from the lab showed that Mosley received the Clear and the Cream, both designer steroids. Mosley reportedly began his doping regimen prior to his rematch with Oscar De La Hoya. 2 losses to a fighter who was later revealed to have been using performance-enhancing drugs, the injustice of it gnawed at Oscar for years. He had played by the rules, and the rules had not protected him. He lost a middleweight title fight to Bernard Hopkins in 2004. This was a different kind of loss. Hopkins did not outpoint Oscar or win on a technicality, he stopped him. In the 9th round, Hopkins landed a body shot that folded De La Hoya like a cheap suit, sending him to the canvas in agony. It was the first time Oscar had been knocked out in his professional career. And it happened on pay-per-view in front of millions of viewers who watched the Golden Boy writhe in pain on the canvas. The Hopkins loss was more than a sporting defeat, it was a demolition of the invincibility myth. Oscar De La Hoya, for all his gifts, could be hurt. He could be stopped. He could be made to quit. And in the ruthless economy of professional boxing, where a fighter's value is determined entirely by his perceived dominance, that knowledge was devastating. The Golden Boy was beginning to tarnish, and everyone could see it. De La Hoya took time away from the ring and focused on other aspects of his life. Already established as a boxing promoter, De La Hoya expanded his business in 2006. He threw himself into Golden Boy promotions with the same intensity he had once brought to the ring. In 2002, De La Hoya had founded Golden Boy Promotions, a combat sports promotional firm. He was the first American of Mexican descent to own a national boxing promotional firm and one of the few boxers to take on promotional responsibilities while still active. It was a remarkable achievement, a fighter transitioning from commodity to capitalist, from labor to management, from the man who gets hit to the man who decides who gets hit. But Oscar could not stay away from the ring. The addictive pool of competition, and perhaps the addictive pool of the only place he ever felt safe, drew him back. His last title win came in 2006 when he took the WBC Super Welterweight title. He lost his last title bout to Floyd Mayweather Jr. but walked away with a $50 million purse. The Mayweather fight in May 2007 was the biggest boxing event of the year. Oscar lost a split decision to the undefeated Mayweather, but the financial numbers were staggering. It was one of the highest-grossing pay-per-view events in boxing history at that point. Even in defeat, Oscar De La Hoya could still draw a crowd. Even in defeat, he could still generate hundreds of millions of dollars. The question nobody was asking, because the money was too good and the spectacle too compelling, was whether the man inside the Golden Boy machine was falling apart. He was, rapidly. His reputation faced controversy when pictures of him wearing heels, fishnets, and underwear were released to tabloids in 2007. Though he initially denied the photos were of him at the time, he admitted they were real for years later. The photos exploded across the internet and the tabloid press, becoming one of the most widely circulated celebrity scandals of the era. For a man whose entire public identity was built on a specific kind of masculine heroism, the boxer, the warrior, the Golden Boy, the images were devastating. They invited ridicule, mockery, and the kind of speculation that follows a public figure to their grave. De La Hoya confirmed that the cross-dressing photos were not part of a marketing or publicity scheme. Those were real pictures. That was me. The ironic part, the crazy part, is that I don't remember it. I just do not remember it. That last detail, I don't remember it, is the key that unlocks the full horror of where Oscar De La Hoya was at that point in his life. He was so deep into substance abuse that entire episodes of his life were being erased from his conscious memory. He was blacking out. He was becoming someone he did not recognize. Literally, he got into a lot of alcohol and drugs, and he just literally lost himself. And the fact that he had a relationship with his mother that was so disconnected, she never told him she loved him. The admission is stark in its simplicity. Alcohol, drugs, a mother who never said she loved him, these are the three pillars upon which the tragedy of Oscar De La Hoya is built. Every championship belt, every Olympic medal, every magazine cover, none of it could fill the void left by a mother's silence. I would always go to these clubs and pick up women, the boxer detailed. And it wasn't necessarily because you want to be with them. You just want to talk and have a voice, some ears to listen to you. And he remembers just crying and spilling everything to that stranger. He did not even know. Here was one of the most famous athletes in the world, a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a man whose face was known on every continent, sitting in nightclubs with strangers, weeping because he had no one in his life he felt he could talk to. The loneliness is almost impossible to comprehend. De La Hoya says his fight against Manny Pacquiao was the one that eats at him the most. Even during training, he felt his heart and drive were not there, and he began drinking during training. This is the detail that transforms the Pacquiao fight from a sporting event into something closer to a surrender. Oscar De La Hoya, a man who had spent his entire life being told that discipline and sacrifice were the only paths to salvation, was drinking during training camp. The gym, the one sacred space where Oscar had always been able to find clarity, had been corrupted. The disease had followed him inside the ropes. I remember not feeling it emotionally and physically. I remember not feeling my body was different. My energy was different. My mind was different. I didn't want to be there anymore. Those last 6 words carry the weight of a man's entire collapse. I didn't want to be there anymore. Not I wasn't ready. Not I underestimated him. I didn't want to be there. Oscar De La Hoya, the man who had spent his whole life wanting nothing more than to be in a boxing ring, no longer wanted to be in a boxing ring. The safe place had become a prison. I remember just really not being into it. And when I stepped into the ring when I fought him in Las Vegas, I already knew deep down inside that I was going to get beat up on. I already knew that I was a loser. And I remember there was a certain round where he was just throwing punches at me and beating me up. And I was thinking in my head, please just land the one punch to end it all. I was literally saying that, and sure enough, the referee called off the fight. The fight took place on December 6, 2008. De La Hoya took a beating, and his corner stopped the fight after the 8th round. Pacquiao was ahead on all 3 judges' scorecards before the stoppage. The aftermath of the Pacquiao fight was not a retirement announcement surrounded by accolades and gratitude, it was a free-fall. Problems compounded when a burned-out De La Hoya all but threw a fight against Manny Pacquiao after 8 painful rounds, marking the beginning of the end of his boxing career. Substance abuse and questionable romantic entanglements followed, as did scandal and multiple lawsuits. Oscar De La Hoya did not walk away from boxing gracefully. He stumbled away from it, drunk and disoriented, into a world that had no use for a retired fighter who could not stop self-destructing. De La Hoya said in a television interview that he had thought about suicide and has been going to rehab because he has become dependent on drugs and alcohol. Rock bottom was recently within a couple of years, just thinking if my life was even worth it. I don't have the strength. I don't have the courage to take my own life. But I was thinking about it. This was 2011, 3 years after the Pacquiao fight. The Golden Boy was sitting in front of a Univision camera, telling the Spanish-speaking world, his community, that he had considered ending his own life. There were drugs. My drug of choice was cocaine and alcohol. Cocaine was recent, the last 2 years, last 2.5 years, and I depended more on the alcohol than the cocaine. Oscar De La Hoya laid it all out with the kind of raw honesty that only comes when a person has truly reached the bottom. There was no publicist managing the narrative. There was no spin. There was just a man broken open, telling the truth about what was killing him. This is the biggest fight of my life, De La Hoya said. I could put all my opponents in one ring and battle all of them, but this monster is going to be the toughest fight of my life. He was not being dramatic, he was being accurate. The opponents in the ring, Chavez, Trinidad, Hopkins, Mosley, Mayweather, Pacquiao, could hurt him for 12 rounds, and then the bell would ring. Depression and addiction do not ring bells. They do not stop between rounds. They do not let you go back to your corner for water and advice. They just keep coming, relentlessly, around the clock, every single day. It was all reckless. And I'm just very fortunate I'm still alive. I think I've thought about committing suicide 3 times. I've been depressed 10 times over the course of my life. 3 times. The man who won an Olympic gold medal, who earned hundreds of millions of dollars, who stood on podiums and raised championship belts to roaring crowds, that man thought about killing himself 3 separate times. The gap between who the world thought Oscar De La Hoya was and who Oscar De La Hoya actually was is the central tragedy of his entire story. De La Hoya said he had been sober for 3 months after undergoing treatment and joining Alcoholics Anonymous. He said he was unfaithful to his wife and that they were separated for a while. We are obviously not talking a Tiger Woods here, but I was unfaithful. The admission of infidelity was almost secondary to everything else Oscar was revealing, but it underscored the pattern, a man systematically destroying every pillar of stability in his own life, driven by compulsions he could not control and pain he could not articulate. The damage Oscar inflicted on his family was not limited to his marriage. Internally, De La Hoya was feeling crippled from a childhood filled with trauma and abuse, and cracks in his well-crafted image began to show. In the early 2000s, he walked away from his ex-partner, model and media personality Shana Mokla, and their then young daughter Aishana De La Hoya. His two other now adult children, Jacob and Devon, suffered the same fate with an absent De La Hoya during their upbringings. Oscar De La Hoya has publicly stated that he did not raise some of his kids fully. During a 2022 episode of a podcast, he revealed that he tried being a father full-time for a few years but later admitted he felt unworthy because his own father was not affectionate. The cycle of dysfunction was replicating itself with horrifying precision. Joel Sr. had been emotionally distant from Oscar. Oscar, in turn, became emotionally and often physically absent from his own children. The sins of the father were not just being visited upon the son, they were being handed down to the next generation like a family heirloom nobody wanted. The retired athlete has 6 children, a Jacob, Devon, a Shanna, Oscar Gabriel Jr., Nina Lauren Ninette, and Victoria Lauren Rose, from different relationships. 6 children, 3 different women, and by Oscar's own admission, he was not truly present for most of their childhoods. The golden boy who had charmed the world with his smile and his fists had failed at the one thing that no amount of talent or money can substitute for: showing up for the people who need you. Over the years, De La Hoya has spoken about his fractured relationship with both his parents and being the victim of abuse as a child. De La Hoya even described going to his mom's grave and telling her he hated her. That image is almost Shakespearean in its anguish, a grown man standing over the grave of the woman whose dying wish had launched his career, telling her headstone that he hated her. The promise he kept at the 1992 Olympics, the gold medal, the tears, the fulfillment of a sacred obligation, now existed alongside the raw, unprocessed rage of a son who had been physically beaten by his mother and never heard the words "I love you" from her lips. The contradiction is so vast that it is almost impossible to hold both truths in your mind at the same time. But Oscar De La Hoya had been holding them his entire life: the obedient son and the angry child, the golden boy and the broken man, the world champion and the addict. He lived in the space between those contradictions, and the pressure of that existence nearly crushed him. He had been in and out of drug and alcohol rehab, including as recently as 2013. In January 2017, De La Hoya was arrested for DUI near his Pasadena home. He pleaded not guilty, and the charges were eventually dismissed. De La Hoya was also the victim of an attempted extortion for $2 million, and he admitted to FBI agents that he had been using cocaine in early 2018. The timeline is relentless: rehab, DUI arrest, extortion attempt, cocaine use admitted to federal agents. This is not the biography of a triumphant champion. This is the police blotter of a man in free fall, catching himself on ledge after ledge, only to stumble off the next one.